As Muslims, we are living here in Australia where we are hardly 2% or just above that in number. We live in a pool of people who do not recognize, who do not appreciate, who do not believe in our Rabb, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No offense to anyone for their belief, for it is their right to choose what they wish to. But it is my and your responsibility, while we know, while we believe, while we understand the purpose of life, the need and necessity of giving da'wah to the people around us simply signifies. Let us see, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us regarding our responsibility and the necessity of giving da'wah to the people around us. Now, Da'watul Islam, or da'wah in itself, is simply an invitation to someone to come towards. And when we say it is Da'watul Islam, it is an invitation to understand, to believe in, or to come forward towards embracing Islam. And this is something, an obligation on all of us as Muslims. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this in the Quran in Surat Al-Imran, surah number 3, ayah number 110. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat lin-nas. تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us and commands us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you are the best of the people. You are the khayra ummah, the best people, the chosen people, the people who have been raised their rank above the people of all other nations. And who are these people? That is ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That is today me and you. So Allah is saying you are the best of the people. Now this in itself is a great title, a great honor. Allah is saying you are the best of the people. That is something amazing, that is something honorable. If Allah tells me or you in front of the entire humanity and says you are the best person, that is simply a great honor from Allah to us. But obviously any honor would come with certain responsibilities. When you are the imam of the masjid, you have an honor, but you have responsibility along with that. You are the member of the committee of the masjid. Yes, you have an honor, you have a respect, but there is a responsibility along with that for sitting on that position. Similarly, when Allah is telling us that you are the best of the people, there is a great responsibility that is being accommodated along with it. And what is that responsibility? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the similar ayah, in the same ayah. Kuntum khayra ummah ukhrijat lin-nas ta'muruna bil ma'ruf. Why? Because you invite all people to that which is al-ma'ruf, which is that which is good, which is that which is halal from Allah and His Messenger, which is that which is permissible from Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَتَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَتَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. And you stop people from that which is wrong, from that which is munkar, from that which is falsehood, from that which is harmful, and that which is haram. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that these are the responsibilities for getting that honor of being the best people. So if, imagine I segregate myself from the responsibility, then I will also be segregated from the honor. If there are no responsibilities that are being fulfilled, then the honor will also be snatched away. So it is something incumbent upon us to make sure that we invite all to that which is al-ma'ruf, that which is the good, and to stop all out there from that which is al-munkar. Now when we say to invite and to stop, we are not enforcing anything. We are not pushing anybody. We are not grudging anybody inside it. We are not holding their collars to do that. We are simply as a person of discipline, as a person of character, we are advising each other. If you see me driving too fast on the road, you are going to do simple thing that you are going to tell me, drive slowly or else you will be in trouble. You will harm somebody, you will harm yourself, or you will be fined or penalized for that. So that is the simple advice, a reminder that I and you can give if somebody makes such a mistake. Similarly, in the subject of religion, in the subject of theology, we do the same thing, that we advise each other of that which is the right thing and stop people from that which is the wrong. So this is something which is basic. To be as a Muslim, we need to convey this message. Looking forward, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honors more amongst us those people who do invite people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As an ummah, this is our responsibility. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah, surah number 2 and number 238, and refers to us Muslims as ummatul wasata, meaning the middle nation. Middle nation for what? The Sahaba, the Mufassirin, they explained this ayah. They said that the Prophet ﷺ was responsible on this ummah. So at his time, the job of the Prophet was to convey the message to the people all around him. And we remember the last khutbah that the Prophet ﷺ gave to the Sahaba. He said to the Sahaba, convey from me to those who are not here. And he even took a pledge from them. He asked them, have I conveyed the message? And they said in affirmative, they said, yes, you have conveyed the message to us. Meaning that the entire message that Allah revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, he had to convey it to the companions. And then the companions were asked by the Prophet to convey it to those who were not there. So we know from the hadith that there were more than 100,000 companions. And most of them, they traveled across from Medina, across the globe. And it is because of that today, I and you are sitting here as Muslims. Because someone in those days reached my and your place and gave dawah to my and your ancestors. Or else I and you could possibly today be wandering around with following something else that was not the true religion. So the responsibility now from this ayah, Surat Al-Baqarah, Allah says that you are ummatul wasata, meaning you are the middle community between the Prophet and the last times, the last age or the last duration in this world. So we are the people who have the responsibility of conveying the message of the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Imagine you are at the time of the Prophet and you don't get the da'wah. Imagine you live in Medina, you live in Mecca, and the Prophet never tells you about Islam. Would that happen? Would that ever happen? It is impossible for that to happen. Because when the Prophet lived in Mecca, he gave da'wah to the extent that the people who opposed him wanted to kill him. Because they were afraid that now everyone has received the message, they were converting to Islam, and they did not want to change the situation that they were living in. So when the Prophet went to Medina, similar thing happened. To the extent that towards the end of the time of the Prophet ﷺ in this dunya, the entire Arabian Peninsula, or at least the major cities, the holy cities, Mecca and Medina, and the surroundings of it, they all embraced Islam. After Fatah Mecca, everyone who was in Mecca, most of them, they embraced Islam. And after that, the disbelievers, they were expelled. So in the holy cities, Mecca and Medina, there were no more non-Muslims. And even in the majority of the Arabian Peninsula, majority of the people embraced Islam. Why? Because of the da'wah of the Prophet, and then it was continued by the Khulafa Rashidun and the Sahaba Ikram. Now, if I and you live in a place, and my neighbor, my friend, my work colleague, my university mate, he does not hear about Islam from me, he does not hear about the invitation of Islam to him, then whose responsibility is that? The Prophet ﷺ is not going to come and talk to him. The Imam of our masjid is not going to go and talk to my neighbor. The person who is knowledgeable, the person who is a da'i, is not going to meet my and your workmate. But the responsibility of giving da'wah and invitation to Islam to them, whom I know, is my responsibility. And on the day of judgment, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to ask the non-Muslims, haven't the deen, haven't the invitation, haven't the religion not reached you? Hasn't there been a warner to you who has invited you to Islam? Hasn't there been a messenger who has invited you to Islam? Imagine, my friend John or your friend Mark, who knows you, is going to be asked by Allah on the day of judgment that has not Islam reached you? Has not a messenger reached you? What is he going to say? Did he know Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam directly? No. Did he know the Imam of the masjid? No. Did he know the Grand Mufti of our country? No. Who did he know? He knew you, Abdullah. He knew you, Abdurrahman. He is going to say, no, this person I knew never told me about Islam. Some of the scholars, they say that we fear. They say that we fear on the day of judgment, before a disbeliever is going to be thrown in the hellfire, we fear that the one who did not fulfill the responsibility of conveying the message to that disbeliever may be thrown in the hellfire before him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from that situation. The point I'm trying to raise is, it is a very simple but a very important obligation on us, that we need to convey the message of Islam to the people around us. Now comes the question, what happens if I don't? What happens if I cannot? My knowledge of Islam, my ability of discussion, my capacity of debating, my ability to remember and convey the message to people is not very strong. And I'm not a scholar. So how am I going to convey the message? So yes, the time does not permit us in the khutbah of a small time to speak about the strategies altogether, but a simple conveyance. The Prophet ﷺ said in Sahih al-Bukhari, the Prophet said, "Ballighu anni walau ayah." Convey from me even if it be one ayah. Subhanallah. All of us Muslims sitting here today, alhamdulillah, I'm sure All of us know certain surahs of the Quran. Yes, we are not the Huffaz, but we know at least certain small surahs of the Quran. And one of the smallest was Surah Al-Ikhlas. Most of us we memorize Surah Al-Fatiha. Even the translation of Surah Al-Fatiha is a great invitation to the people out there. The people out there, they are searching for something to make sense of the life. People are becoming atheist, Buddhist, agnostic, satanists. People are ready to become satanists in the search to find peace for their life, to find a meaning to their purpose of life. And if we could just simply recite to them the verses of the Quran, one surah, two surah, or simply the translation of those ayats, I can assure you that many of them would have an ear, would give you an ear to listen further. Surah Al-Ikhlas, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Say. What is it? What does the surah say? Qul, say. So what happens? Our Imam reads Qul, we all listen, and we leave everything before we leave the door of the masjid. Allah is teaching us, Allah is commanding us, Qul, say. Not hear. The command is not to hear. The command is to say. Say to whom? Stand in front of the mirror and say? Yes, when you say, when you read the Quran, you get the ajr. Yes, the ajr is there, bi'idhnillah. There is no denial of that. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward every one of us for reading and reciting the Quran. That is part of our faith. But what is the whole purpose of that recitation? What is the point of me reciting? Drinking alcohol is prohibited. What is the purpose of me reading? Look after your parents. And then I don't fulfill that when I go out of the masjid. The Quran is a reminder. Is a dhikr, it is a reminder. It is for us to listen and to fulfill the command in the Quran that is mentioned. And what is the Quran saying? Qul, say, huwa Allahu ahad. He is Allah, the one and only. What we are doing? We are listening from the command while reciting the Quran in the salah from the imam, listening and closing our mouths and closing our ears. When we leave the masjid, we do not say this to anyone. We do not say this, that Allah is only one, to anybody. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. We read the shahada. What is the shahada? Out of the 5 pillars, the first pillar is shahada. What is the meaning of shahada? Shahada is to give witness to somebody else, not to witness for yourself. Do you witness to yourself? Yes, in Islam, the shahada, the spirituality of it, we need to recite it as well, every day. That there is only one Allah and there is nobody else worthy of worship. Yes, we have to read that to fulfill our faith, to complete our iman. But the purpose of shahada, ashhadu an la ilaha, meaning I bear witness, I give witness that there is no God except Allah. If you're going to lock the door of the masjid and shout inside the masjid, I bear witness that there is only one Allah, yes, we will get the ajr for reading and reciting it. But the purpose of it was never restricted to the masjid. The purpose of shahada was to declare it to everyone out there that there is no other God worthy of worship except our Rabb, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that the person out there who is unaware of Allah is invited to the Rabb, to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is regarding what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now glorifies such people and says in the Quran, in Surah Fussilat, Surah number 41, ayah number 33, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, who is better in his speech than the one who invites people to Allah and does righteous good deeds and says, I'm one of the Muslims, I'm one of the believers. This is the character of a true Muslim. This is the character of a Muslim who follows the commands of Allah and His Messenger. That he does amalu salihah, he fulfills all the 5 pillars, the shahada, the salah, the psalm, zakah, hajj, and does all the good deeds, and also invites people to Allah. Now let me give you one example of one of the sahabi from whom this famous hadith of 5 pillars of Islam. We know this hadith, right? That if you fulfill the 5 pillars, you go to Jannah. Yes or no? Right? We all have heard this famous hadith that if we do 5 pillars of Islam, we fulfill, we are going to go Jannah. Now this hadith itself is much longer than that. There is a companion of the Prophet ﷺ who is a Bedouin, who comes from a far off place, and he is a little rude in his approach. So he comes to the Masjid al-Nabawi, and he inquires, where is Muhammad? And he says, I want to talk to him. And the Prophet ﷺ welcomes him and brings him, and the Sahaba allow him to come all the way to the mimbar, come in the front. He sits down and he asks the questions to the Prophet. He says, you claim to be Prophet, are you a Prophet? And he goes further. And in the long narration, he then asks about the 5 pillars. He says the first pillar, he says the second pillar, he repeats the third pillar, the fourth and the 5th, and he says, I will do only this, nothing more, nothing less. So 5 prayers, the second pillar, I will do nothing more, nothing less. The Psalm, I will fast the month of Ramadan, nothing more, nothing less. Similarly for Zakah and Hajj. And he says, I will fulfill this, but nothing more and nothing less. And he leaves. And the Prophet says to the companions then, that if he does what he said, then he will go to Jannah. Right? So this is where we get this, that if I and you fulfill the 5 pillars, we will go to Jannah. And inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala count us amongst those who are the ones who fulfill the 5 pillars of Islam. And may Allah count us amongst those who are going to be sent to Jannah straight away on the day of judgment. Say Ameen. Now, this hadith doesn't end here. The narration goes further. It says that this person, when he went back to his place. Now imagine this Sahabi, how much time did he spend with the Prophet? Maybe one period of day, like between Zuhr to Asr. Just between one period of the day. He didn't spend days, he didn't spend weeks, he didn't spend months with the Prophet. So he learned very little. And what did he learn? 5 pillars. And if you do 5 pillars, go to Jannah. Right? This is all more or less he learned. And his approach was so strict, so stiff, that he said, I will do only this, nothing more and nothing less. So he was very, stiff in his statement. When he goes back, he reaches his home and his wife welcomes him. And remember, in those days when you're traveling, there was a possibility that you will never return because of the accidents while traveling. And when he returns, his wife is obviously very happy. She welcomes him and starts preparing the food and gets everything ready for him. Now the hadith mentions that when this person, this Sahabi, reaches home, he sits down and starts talking to his wife. He starts giving her the Dawah of Islam, starts to rationalize with her, discusses with her, debates with her until she embraces Islam. And this is on the same night. He reached their home and now he started giving Dawah to his wife. The moment she embraces Islam, he goes and knocks the door of his neighbor. And he starts to talk to him. He starts to invite him to Islam. He talks to him about one Rabb. He talks to him about the 5 pillars of Islam. He starts to discuss with him. He starts to challenge him. He starts to narrate him. He starts to ask questions to him until the first neighbor embraces Islam. Then he goes and knocks the door of the second neighbor until he embraces Islam. Then he goes and knocks the door of the third neighbor. And the hadith says that the entire town, and remember in those days, probably it was 10, 20, 30 houses, whatever. Wallahu alam. He goes to all houses the same night. He didn't go to sleep yet. And he has conveyed the message to the entire town. And all of them embraced Islam on the same night. I say that this is what this Sahabi, who spent very little time with the Prophet ﷺ, understood the purpose of these 5 pillars of Islam. Because the very first pillar, the declaration of Shahada, it is to convey it to those who are yet unaware of it. And that is what is the meaning, the purpose, the soul, the spirit of fulfilling the 5 pillars of Islam. So when I say I will do the second pillar, that is Salah, when I stand in the Salah and I recite the Quran, I cannot neglect the Quran and say I have fulfilled the Salah. I haven't. If I am praying Salah and that which is recited in the Salah, that which is commanded in the Salah, I disobey that, then what is the entire purpose of that Salah? Probably yes, you will fulfill the tick mark of doing the Salah, but the purpose of it is still in vain. So my dear brothers and sisters, the message, the conveyance that I want all of us to understand is that we need to convey the message of Islam to the people around us. Now comes a severe matter. What happens if we don't convey? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surat Al-Asr, surah number 103, ayah number 123, one of the shortest surahs of the Quran. And subhanallah, most of us, probably in our salah, we love to recite this surah, Surat Al-Asr, right? Because it makes your salah quick. You can reach home quick and do the business, right? But the meaning of this surah is very intense, to the extent that one of the great scholars of Islam, Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, said, if Allah were to reveal only Surat Al-Asr, it would have been enough. Meaning the meaning in it gives the entire purpose of salvation, entire pathway to salvation. And what is this surah? Allah takes the oath of the time and says that all human beings, innal insana lafi khusr, entire humanity is in khasara. Khasara is referring to Jahannam on the day of judgment. That is the khasara. It's not having an accident or losing some money in the business or losing your job. That is khasara. But that is khasara in the dunya. But the khasara in this surah is referring to the khasara of akhirah. And that is to be thrown into the hellfire forever. That is khasara. And Allah says that Allah takes an oath and says every human being is in khasara. Except the people who fulfill these 4 conditions simultaneously. Listen to it again. Whoever fulfills these 4 conditions simultaneously. He cannot fulfill 3 and leave one, he will still be in khasara. He cannot fulfill 2 and leave 2. He will still be in khasara. So I and you, we need to fulfill all the 4 together. What are these 4 conditions? Illa alladhina amanu. The first condition is to bring faith. Anyone who does not bring faith, who does not embrace Islam, does all the good deeds in the world, will he or she enter Jannah? No. The criteria is very clear. The criteria is very clean. We know from the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, the uncle of the Prophet Abu Talib, who was one of the biggest supporters of the Prophet ﷺ, rather one of the biggest human protectors of the Prophet ﷺ. As long as Abu Talib was alive, the people of Makkah could not even plot to kill the Prophet ﷺ. They decided to kill the Prophet only after Abu Talib passed away. He was the protector of Prophet ﷺ. He brought up the Prophet ﷺ. He fed the Prophet ﷺ. He nourished the Prophet ﷺ. But will he enter Jannah? We know from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet says, my uncle will go to Jahannam, but he will be given the least punishment of Jahannam. And one of the narrations mentions that he will be put down. He will be put with shoes from the hellfire, such that his brain will be burst off with the heat, with the intensity of the hellfire. Now this is simply one of the narrations. I'm not saying whether this is true or false, but my point is, we know that Abu Talib, the biggest helper and supporter and protector of the Prophet ﷺ, will not enter Jannah. Why? He did not fulfill the first condition of Surat Al-Asr. Illa alladhina amanu. Unless you bring faith, nothing else is accepted. It's thrown away. Okay, when you bring faith, will you enter Jannah directly? The hadith of the Prophet, whoever brings faith will go to Jannah. When? After giving the response to our deeds to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. That is why the second condition, amalus salihat, illa alladhina amanu wa amilus salihat, and fulfill the commands of Allah and do the righteous good deeds. Whatever Allah has said, whatever the Prophet ﷺ has said, whatever is mentioned in the Quran, whatever is mentioned in the Hadith, fulfilling the 5 prayers, fulfilling the fasting of the month of Ramadan, going to Hajj, giving zakah, giving sadaqah, helping poor and needy, looking after your parents, looking after your families, being good to our neighbors, being good to our workmates, being sincere in our work, not cheating, not deceiving, not being corrupt, not being greedy. All of this encompasses in amalus salihat. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes out 2 particular amal and makes it condition 3 and condition 4. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ. Unless you give one another the da'wah of haqq. What is haqq? The deenul haqq. That is the religion of truth, the religion of Islam. Unless you invite one another, unless you recommend one another to al-haqq, the 3rd condition is not fulfilled. And the 4th, while you do the first 3 conditions, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Because of these first 3 conditions, when you face troubles, when you are kicked out of your workplace, when you are kicked out of your country, when you are losing your neighborhood, why? Because you did the first 3. You brought iman, that is why you are being isolated. You do amalus salih, you pray salah, that's why you are being kicked out of your job. You do da'wah to the people, you invite them to Islam, that's why you are facing trouble. It is then وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ that you should be patient in those situations. So unless you do these 4 conditions, the khasara is bound to overcome us. Now coming towards the last part. Now this is the serious part. What happens if we don't convey the message? Now we live in Australia. 50% plus community of Australia says that they are Christians, that they believe in a religion which is Christianity, believe in one God as we believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they associate partner with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in regards to Isa alayhi salam. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reacts to this particular situation so severely that the scholars, they say that there is no other place in the Quran that Allah reacts so heavily, that Allah himself reacts. And it's mentioned in Surah Maryam, Surah number 19, ayah number 88 to 92. I request all of you that when we go home today, take this as a homework, not for today, but maybe over the weekend. 3 to 4 ayats. Surah Maryam, Surah number 19, ayah number 88 to ayah number 92. 4 ayats. Go through the translation and go through the tafsir of these ayats. It is something serious. It is something that will help us understand the importance of giving da'wah. Now what I'm trying to say is my neighbor is going to celebrate. We are right here in the festive season, right? We are right here by the end of this week. We are going to enter the festive season, the Christmas, which is the largest religious celebration of the world. Largest religious celebration of the world, and which is in regards to Isa alayhi salam. Now there is there are 2 circumstances into it. Some people celebrate it religiously, some people celebrate it probably not religiously, but just customarily. just as a society. They don't believe in it, but they celebrate it. But as a Muslim, now this is where it comes to. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Maryam, Surah number 19, ayah number 88 to 92. وَقَالُوا اتَّخَذَ الرَّحْمَنُ وَلَدًا. And for the saying of theirs, that Allah has begotten a son. وَقَالُوا اتَّخَذَ الرَّحْمَنُ وَلَدًا لَقَدْ جِئْتُمْ شَيْئًا إِدًّا. This is the worst saying that a human tongue can ever utter. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes further and says, and if the ability to react to this statement of human beings that Allah has got a son, if the ability to react to this statement that Allah has got a son was given to other creations of Allah. You know, interestingly, we humans are the only creation of Allah that can react. You know, we are the only ones who have senses. We think, we work, we can react. The other creations do not have the ability to react. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that this saying of the humans, that Allah has begotten a son, is so severe that this is the worst saying from the human tongue ever. And if the ability to react to this was given to the heavens, the earth and the mountains. These are some of the most powerful things in the universe. The heavens, they don't fall. The earth, it's established. And the mountains, they hold the earth. So Allah says that if they were given the ability to react, what would have happened? وَقَالُوا اتَّخَذَ الرَّحْمَنُ وَلَدًا لَقَدْ جِئْتُمْ شَيْئًا إِدًّا تَكَادُ السَّمَاوَاتُ يَتَفَطَّرْنَ مِنْهُ وَتَنْشَقُّ الْأَرْضُ وَتَخِرُّ الْجِبَالُ هَدًّا. Allah says if the heavens were given the ability to react, they would have burst asunder. If the earth was given the ability to react, it would have opened with earthquakes. And if the mountains were given the ability to react, they would have bursted into utter ruin like lifeless cotton. Subhanallah, this is what the scholars have explained from this ayah. They said, if the heaven was given a minute to react to this hearing of the human word that Allah has got a son, and there is a date of birth of the son of Allah, and that is this Christmas, the tafasir say, the scholars of Islam, they say that the heavens would burst. They will open up, they will burst up. The earth will shake that it has never shaken before with such strength. You know, we remember in Japan, there was an earthquake a couple of years ago. Just little, it said that it shook the entire country, Japan, for probably 2 meters. A meter or 2 meters, and the entire country, Japan, moved. And you saw the chaos. It says that the earth would shake with strength, with the intensity that you would never have seen. And the mountains will all burst into utter ruin like cotton and flow like cotton. This is the reaction. Now, we are not being commanded by Allah to react something, you know, like a foolish person or a crazy man, go and harm somebody or hurt somebody. No, this is not from Islam. But what we are commanded is to convey the message. When people are celebrating something which is inappropriate according to our belief. Okay, we don't stop them from celebrating. It is their right. When the Prophet ﷺ went to Medina, the Yahud, the Jews, the Bani Israel of the time, they were having celebration. And the Prophet did not stop them. It was Khilafah of Islam. The Prophet was ruling Medina. But the Prophet didn't stop the Jews from celebrating their religious festival. We will not stop the Christians, and we should not. Even in a Muslim country, if Christians celebrate, they are allowed to celebrate. If a Jew celebrates, they are allowed to celebrate. Celebration of their own religion is completely fine. But I and you cannot participate in that. You know, here in Australia, we know what happened with Aboriginal community, the owners of the land. Now, when we have Australia Day, the Aboriginal community refuses from celebrating. Aren't they happy with all of us? We're all happy because Australia is a good country, yes. But they say that it reminds them of the genocide that took place against their ancestors. So they refuse to celebrate on that day. They have even demanded to make the date changed from Australia Day, from that date to another date. Now, the point is, you have every right as a human being, as a Muslim, as an Australian, to say, I have an exemption, I take an exemption from celebrating this festival because it goes against my belief. What is the point of celebrating when you don't believe in it? Yes, somebody else is celebrating, completely fine, but I will not be part of that celebration.